Kum learn in a blood Gemara. We are up to Daf Nun Ches Amid Aleph by the two dots. So we're continuing the activities of the sprinkling of the blood of the bull and of the goat. And then it says, so you sprayed the 1 and 7 of the bull, then you sprayed the 1 and 7, then you went out and shechted the goat, and then you came in and sprayed the 1 and 7 of the goat, and then you went and you did it opposite the paroiches. And it says here that after you sprayed the 1 and 7 of the bull, whatever it is, you take now the one of the bull and you put it into the one of the goat, and then to take it together, and you take it back and you pour it into the empty bowl. Originally was the bowl of the bull, and so you mix the two bloods together. Okay, so we learned. It says over here, you take now the new full vessel that has in it both bloods, and you put it back into the empty one. Says the Gemara, so right now the Gemara is going to think it means you actually take the entire vessel now that has both bloods mixed together, and you insert it into the vessel that now was emptied out. So you're putting one vessel inside another. That's one of the things right now. You want to later is going to answer. We're talking about no. You take the blood out of the new mixed blood, and you put it into the other vessel. But let's go through the Gemara. Question: what happens if in niach mizrak betech mizrak? What happens, generally speaking, if a kohen places one bowl inside another one? The kibul boyas adam, and in other words, he has two kelim, one kelim inside another, and he brings it forward, and he puts it under the neck of the animal, and he captures the blood. Mao, what's the din? So Nun Ches Amud Aleph, right in the middle of the page. Mao, what's the din? What's the shaila? What's the din? What's the problem? The problem is the Torah says that you should take something. Is it considered a chatzitz or not? Because your hand is not actually touching the keli. So the question is, Mao, do we say min b'minei chaitzitz or yeino chaitzitz? Do we say because it's the same material, even so it's still chaitzitz, or do we say because it's the same material, it's not a chatzitz, it's not intercepting, and therefore it's as if you're holding on to the blood itself, and there's no problem? That's what we would think. Taisus over here explains the long Taisus. The Taisus on the bottom of the page and other places explains that the Gemara in Sukkah, we're going to have a whole argument. If you take a lulav and you add something to the bottom of the lulav, and through that you're holding onto the lulav. And we said there that if it's surrounding the lulav, but it's like a handle it becomes a handle to the lulav, then it's all right. But over here, says Taisus, it's not a handle because there's two kelim, and the second keli is basically replicating the first keli. So it's not really considered a handle, and it's more a chatzitza. That's the question. So that's one explanation. So the question is, a chatzitza or not? Oh, it's a suit. It's right here in our Mishnah. Nosan is hamoli b'reika. The mother learned right now that he takes the full keli of blood and you put it into the vessel. Originally had the blood, and you put it into there. So we see my lab. You put a full keli into an empty keli, and you see it's not a problem. So the mother no. Either mizrak mizrak, not that you put the full vessel into the other one, you're pouring out the blood of the full one into the other one. Says the Gemara, doesn't make sense. I'll tell you later. First, we learned either dam hapar dam. So when you take a seed, you take the blood of the bull and you mix it up together with the blood of the goat. So you did that already. So why would you not pour it again into the other keli? You already have a mixture. So that's not a question. After you poured it into one keli, you mixed it a little bit. Now you poured the entire contents back into the original keli, which is empty. Why? As you're pouring, it makes it even better and better. So the question still remains. Is it a chatzitz or not? So Tashma, come in here. We know that by a kohen gadol has to stand on the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, because we know that the floor of the Beis Hamikdash is considered holy as well. And just like a clay sharis makes everything holy that's inside it, the floor of the Beis Hamikdash makes everything inside of the Beis Hamikdash holy. And we know, what do we know about a clay sharis? Nothing's allowed to be there between your hand and the keli. So the same thing is a kohen stands on the ground. Nothing should be between him and the ground itself. So says the Gemara, what about the kohen who is standing not directly on the floor, but on top of a keli, an upside down, let's say, vessel, and he's standing on top of that. He's standing on the foot of his friend. Now, regel chaveda is like min b'minay. if you're standing on a keli is min be'ena min. It's not the same sign, but your foot and your friend's foot is the same kind. And yet it says it's possible. It doesn't show that min b'mina is also possible on top of the other if it's standing in the way. Say, well, that's no problem. Shiny regel a regel is a foot is different because that kohen needs his foot, and he's going to have to pull it away soon. So therefore, that foot never becomes bottled to you, and that's why it's considered chatzitza. When it comes to a second keli, you can leave it there, the second keli. So therefore, the question is it a chatzitza or not? So that's one way of looking at it. So there's no answer. Another version is hochi boimi. The question is a little bit slightly different. Is it derech shidus bekach or ein derech shidus bekach? That the problem is not chatzitza. The problem is it the normal way of serving or not the normal way of serving? If it's not the normal way of serving, then you're not yetzer. As if you're saying, I don't care if it's a chatzitza or not. Maybe it's not a chatzitza. But the problem is that this is the derech, the way of serving, or it's not the way of serving. And therefore, if it's not the way of serving, you should not be yetzer. Says the Gemara, Toshma coming here, Rabbi Shmuel learned. It says, "Es kol klei hasharis asa yisharsim b'ma kodesh." It says that all the klei sharis that he takes all the klei sharis that we're talking about here how they used to wrap up the and move around the ferry across the parts of the Beis Hamikdash or the Mishkan. So you take all the klei sharis that they use over there. And it says, "Kol klei hasharis asher yisharis." It says all the klei hasharis asher yisharis b'ma kodesh. So it sounds like sharis b'ma is in singular form, and what do you call it? And kol klei hasharis is plural. So what's pshat? It seems to me that shnei kelim is achas. It seems to me you can use a lot of kelim even just for one particular service. So a keli inside a keli is perfectly normal. So it's definitely, according to this example, you definitely can use. We answer the question. It's not a chatzitza because maybe and you can use. It's called derech as well. Okay, you tell me one keli inside another keli is all right. What about if a niach sieve b'teicha mizrach? What about if you take the part around the palm tree that grows around the tree and you put that as an inner, wall or something inside the keli? And you put the blood in that. Kibul boy says, "Mao, what's it in here? Here already two different species, two different kinds. Do we say it's a min b'she'eni min? Do we say that you have over here the keli, but then you have something else, a growth from a plant, from a palm tree, and therefore it's considered a chatzitza, and you're not yaitze, or maybe it's not chatzitza. Why not? Even the mechalchel, because it's full of holes and it's very leaky." Like very porous, like chayitz, it's not considered chatzitza because it's so porous that all the blood goes right through it and hits the wall anyway. So it's not considered chatzitza. Or maybe we say it doesn't matter, and it's considered chatzitza. I don't care if a lot of the liquid goes through it; it's still a chatzitza. So the Gemara, it makes no difference. Amalei said, Tanina, we actually learned. What about, let's say you have a trough that comes directly from a spring, and you have a sponge inside that trough, that spring water. You can use that for your mechatas, for the water of chata. You need spring water, and you have that. But any water that was absorbed inside the sponge is puzzle. So what do? You want to use that particular water. How to use the water? So he says, so you start pouring out the water. Zoylif v'hoylech. You start pouring out the water trough into the keli you want to use. Until you come to the sponge, and you don't use the water from the sponge because we need mayim chaim el keli, that the water should touch the keli, so you cannot have the sponge coming in. Okay, so that's where you pour the water until you get to the sponge. So what does he clear from here? That even though a sponge is definitely porous and water goes right through it, and yet we consider chatzitza. Says what to know? Shiny maya de klisha. But second, we don't consider. Sorry, we take all the water around it. Now there's definitely water coming through. There's water definitely that came into the sponge, went out the sponge. Okay, the sponge itself you cannot use because there's water right now absorbed in that sponge, and that water absorbed in the sponge cannot be used because that's mayim chayim. Okay, that's not mayim chayim. But any water that went in and out of the sponge is all right. You can use all that water. So we see from here that the sponge is not considered a chatzitza. So the same thing with the sieve. The water goes into the sieve and right out on the other end, and therefore it's not a chatzitza at all, and it's all good. Says the Gemara. Says continue pouring out. Actually, get us when you get to the sponge. Our question wasn't regarding water. Water, you're right. Water goes right through. It's not a problem. We're talking about blood. Blood is much thicker. And the question is, as far as blood is concerned, maybe it obstructs some of it, so therefore it's acting as a chatzitza. That's our question. Or do we say because it's porous enough and most of the blood goes right through it, that's good enough? Ikadamri, others say, in fact, not Hachi Pashi actually did resolve it. And he said, Bedam Kasher, when it comes to blood, even though it's a bit thicker, it still goes through. It's not a chatzitza. It's possible. If, let's say, koimetz by a mincha, which is where you scoop out with 3 fingers, has the same role as sprinkling the blood on mizbeach by an animal. So if you put the koimetz, after you take the komitz, you're supposed to put it into a clay shutters and one of the vessels based on English, and bring it with you to the mizbeach and roast and burn it. So if you put it into a vessel, the koimetz, and it had in it palm, the sieve, then it's considered a chatzitza because obviously it doesn't go through it. But when it comes to liquids, even blood, it goes right through it, so it's not a chatzitza. Okay, and Chesed Bey is the next Mishnah. We're continuing the activity of the Kohen Gadol already sprayed in the Kodesh Kodashim, and he already sprayed in front of the Breiches. And again, we said it didn't land on the Breiches. According to most opinions, it just went on the floor, except according to Rabbi Elazar. But Rabbi Yossi, who he said that he saw in Rome, in the catacombs of Rome, that it did have blood on the curtain. So now we continue. It says the Gemara, it says in the Pasuk, the Yotza El HaMizbeach, he should go out. Now we're up to the 30th. Now he has to spray on top of the Mizbeach Hazov. So it says here, the Yotza El HaMizbeach, he goes out to the Mizbeach. That's Asher Lifnei Hashem. Important because the 2 Mizbeachos, there's the outside Mizbeach and the inner one. The inner one is called Lifnei Hashem. All of it is inside, and not just part of it. Mizbeach Hazov. This is for Mizbeach Hazov. Hischil, and what do you do then? Hischil mechate v'yedid. You start spraying it and put your hand down. In other words, we're gonna have a machlekes. How does the kohen? You have to spray down all 4 corners. Does he? Remember, the mizbeach was 2 amas tall, but only 1 amma in width and length. Now, 1 amma you can bend over and just put your finger. Now you don't even spray it. Hey, you take your finger and you put it onto the corners. So do you physically have to walk around the mizbech, or do you stand in one place? You position yourself by 1 corner and then you just bend over and you put it on other corners. Our Tana holds that you have to walk around by foot, and therefore you have to go around each keren and place a little bit of blood on top of the keren, and you have to go from top to bottom. In other words, you put your finger downwards. Yeah. What do you call it? So you work your way down, and you streak it all the way down. And the reason is because if you turn your hand upside down and you work your way up, as you're putting your hand upwards, even though it's as bad as low, when you're getting to the higher part, the blood starts flowing down your hand, down your arm, under your clothes, and it sullies the Kohen Gadol's clothes. But if you're doing downwards, your hand is downwards, then if you're putting your hand downwards and the blood is working its way down, so then what happens is the blood, if anything, it will flow down your finger and work its way down the back. It won't come back creeping down on your hands. So therefore, you do it from the top and you work your way down to the bottom. Rashi said the word mechate means to go down. The other Rishonim disagree. But anyway, that so was it mechat? How does the Kohen Gadol walk? He starts mekeren mizrachit tzronis. Remember, mizrachit is as you enter the base of Mikdash. That's the mizrach side, and the north on the right, which means that our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi that there was only 1 corner, 1 curtain. The difference, if you hold, is 1 curtain or 2 curtains, is how the Kohen Gadol walked in from which side of the room did the Kohen Gadol walk in from the Kodesh to the Kodesh Kodashim. There's only 1 curtain, and the entrance is all the way on the right, on the tzafon side, which is what our Mishnah says. He's starting out on the tzafon side, but we'll see that when he comes out, the first part of the bed that he encounters is the tzafon of the west, northwest, because west is the side that's close to the Kodesh Kodashim. But it says the yotza elam is bed. You have to go away, to go out. So therefore, he goes to the next one, along the right side, which is the northeast. So according to our Mishnah, you start from the northeast and then you work your way around to the right. So you go from Mizrach, Tzfain to the northeast, Tzfain is Marav is to the northwest. So you're working your way right, and then Marav is Dremis, and you go across from to the south side, and Dremis Marav. If you're facing the Mizbeach, you're always going to the right, and Dremis Mazrachis. But if you follow the other opinion, which is there were two curtains in the Beis Hamikdash, then the entrance would have been on the left side, on the south side. And then you would have started not from the south, then you would have started from the south side again, but from the southeast corner, because of the Yotzim Mizbech. And if you're starting the southeast corner, you'll be going exactly the other way as we'll soon see. So, but our Mishnah follows up Yesi. So, Mokum Shu Maschil Bechatas on Mizbech Chitzon, the outer Mizbech, you always start from the southeast corner. Remember, when you're in the outer Mizbech, you walk up the ramp and then you make a right turn. So you're on the southeast corner. That's where you start the Mizbech HaChitzon. But that is where you end in the Mizbech HaPnimi. According to this Mishnah, you end on the south east corner. That's the last place you do. That's where you finish. I don't believe you walk around at all by foot. You're standing in one place, you just bend over and you touch each of the four corners. And you would go ahead and put the blood on all the corners. Since you're bending over on all of them, you have your fingers, because you're standing high up, and your fingers are just touching right in the top. You're not walking around, so you just touch and you move on. So it doesn't matter. We're not worried that anything's gonna slip down your hand. You're not starting from the bottom, working way up. You're starting right from the top. Except the one in front of him. There we have the problem that if you're going to start from the bottom and work your way up, as you're getting towards the corners, the corner is going to flow down your hand. So that's when you go for the top down. So after that, after you did the four corners, you then sprinkle al tira on the surface of the mizbeach. So the four corners are not sprinkling. Four corners, you take your finger and you put a little blood, dab a little blood on all four corners, and then you go to the top of the mizbeach and there you spray 7 times. It's called tira mizbeach. The Gemara explain later why it's called tira. Now, b'shiyori adam, what do you do? What do you do leftover blood? If you remember the mizbeach in the base, he had 2 holes. One hole was facing the Beis Hamikdash, so that was the western side. It was on the south, so it was the southwestern side. The other hole was not facing the Beis Hamikdash, but facing the south side. So that was on the south. So one was on the west side near the corner, and the other one was on the south side near the corner. So the different all kabbanas were put on the south side near the corner, but kabbanas that were done inside the Beis Hamikdash were put on the west side near the corner. So what do they do with the leftover blood? In this case over here, is Shiori Adam, how you shayfech, how you say Maravish Mizbeach HaChitzon. They did it on the western side of the thing. Mizbeach HaChitzon, the kabbanas for the outer Mizbeach, how you shayfech, they will put on the southern side. And when you pour down these 2 shoots, Elu the Elu Misarvin, eventually the blood gets mixed up together. The Amma, they mix up together when they go to that creek. The Yoitzin the Nachal Kidron, and then they go outside to the Nachal Kidron. And you're not allowed to use that blood because it came from the Beis Hamikdash unless you pay for it. The Nimkorin, and they would sell it leganin into garden of Lazabo for Lazevo as a fertilizer, umoili behen, and if they would use it without paying, they would be stealing from the Beis Hamikdash. That's the Mishnah. The Yotza El HaMizbeach, it says you should go out to the Mizbeach. What's it going to teach you? It says, what do you mean you should go out to the Mizbeach? Come teach you Lefish Matzina Bepar. We find that the par that comes for all the mitzvahs, you bring a par. Since we find that what do you call the par that comes in all the mitzvahs. For example, the par that the Kohen Gadol, whatever, any other mitzvah. Where does the Kohen normally stand? For let's say if a Kohen did not Veda or anything else, where do they stand? They would stand on the other side of the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach would be sort of in between them and the Parechis. And that's when he sprays on the Parechis. Kohen was standing outside of the Mizbeach. When he's spraying like the Mizbeach is in between him and the Parechis. Yochav Zaken, with your kippah is the same thing. The Yotza El Mizbeach. It says that after you finish your activity of spraying on the Parechis, I want you to go out towards the Mizbeach, which means where were you standing till now? Between the Mizbeach and the Parechis. Where was he till now? Lifnim min Mizbeach. Must be they were standing before the Mizbeach. So that's when you pass a Yotzim Mizbeach to teach you that the Kohen Gadol, when he sprays on the Pareches, for Yom Kippur at least, he stands next to the Pareches. Tanya Ilun Abrai said the other way around for regarding all of the Kabbanas. Lifnei Hashem, it says in the pasuk, Lifnei Hashem, Atam Aleim. It says Yotzim Mizbeach, Asher Lifnei Hashem. What are you going to teach him? Lechem Lefishin, the Paravas Geburim, Shekohen Avim Mizbeach. Since we've umazah Pareche b'shah shehu mazah, since we see that the Kohen Gadol stands next to Pareches when he's praying, Yochel Avzekain. I was thought all of the Kabbanas are exactly the same thing. Tamalayme, therefore it says that Mizbeach Toides Hasamim Lifnei Hashem, the Mizbeach that is on before Hashem, Asher ba'oil Mizbeach, it comes to describe this Mizbeach, it calls it the Mizbeach Toides Samim Asher Lifnei Hashem. This is to say, what's the closest thing to Hashem? What's the closest thing to the Kodesh Kodashim? The Mizbeach Toides Samim, the golden Mizbeach. And you stand after that. Mizbeach Lifnei Hashem. The Mizbeach is before Hashem, but the ain't Kohen Lifnei Hashem. A Kohen himself is not before Hashem. Okay, so how does it work? You stand outside of the Mizbeach, and then you sprinkle. That's all the other kabbanas. Then he's chumlechat. You said that he does all four corners and he starts, dabbing the blood and making it go down, streaks that go downwards. Tell him what we learned. He's chumlechat. You started doing this. Which corner? So this first opinion says mikeren mizroch is not like our Mishnah. It starts from the southeast corner. In other words, this Tana here, the was going to hold that there were two curtains and that you came out from the left side, from the south side, and you skip one, so you go to the southeast corner. And then the Remis Marovis, and then you go back to the southwest corner. And the question is going to be, why do you go back to the southwest? Shouldn't you just continue going to the right, southeast? Then you should go to the northeast and the northwest and the southwest. Why do you have me straight away from the southeast going to the southwest? And not only are you starting at a point to go to Kiva, you're actually going the other way. We'll soon see. The Gemara will explain why you have to go back to the original place, the first corner that you encountered. You have to go back to your second. On the one hand of the yotza, you have to bypass it, but then we have a rule, which tells you, but you had the opportunity there, go back. So according to Rabbi Kiva, you bypass the southwest corner, you go to the southeast because of the yotza Mizbech. But then when you're ready to start dabbing the rest of the ones, you have to go first back to where you went, which is the northeast. And once you do that, you continue going in counterclockwise. The Ravis, then you do the southwest. Maravish then you northwest, and then you do the northeast. If Shigul says the Keren Mizrach Tzvaynis, he says no. You start from the northeast because he holds only one curtain, and therefore basically holds like Rabbi Yossi. There's only one curtain, so you go from the right side, and you bypass the northwest. You go to the northeast, and then you go back to the northwest, which is the one you just bypassed, and you continue going to the right. Mizrach Tzvaynis, then you do the northeast, then you do Tzvaynis Maravi, the northwest, and Maravi is the southwest. The Reim is Mizrachis, the south and the southeast. Mokum Rabbi Yossi Haglili Maschil, Sham Rabbi Kiva Paisik. Rabbi Yossi Haglili finishes at the north, at the northwest. That's where Rabbi Akiva finishes. The northeast. So that's where Rabbi Akiva finishes. Rabbi Yossi starts the northeast and then works the way around. Rabbi Akiva finishes in the northeast. Mokum Rabbi Akiva Maschil, Rabbi Akiva begins, which is the southeast. Shom Rabbi Akiva place. That's where it finishes. But everyone says one thing: the very first corner that you encounter, according to Rabbi Yossi, will be the northwest. That's facing the Beis Hamikdash. According to Rabbi Akiva, it's the southwest. That's facing the Beis Hamikdash, and that's where you're coming from. My timer. What's the reason? That's facing the Kodesh Kodashim. What's the reason? Amar Shmuel, Amar Kra, it says a pasuk, v'yotze el mizbech. At the nafik mikol mizbech, you have to bypass the first corner of the mizbech, because it says v'yotze el mizbech, you have to bypass to the other end of the mizbech. Now the more has a question, Rabbi Kiva, not give that if you mean Rabbi Kiva, who says you start from the southeast corner, but instead of going to the right, you go to the left, you go back to the southwest corner, not in Lema, let us say, but the Rami by maybe he argues on this whole idea that you always have to venture to the right. Maybe he disagrees. Rabbi Cheskel said that Yam Sha'asa Shleima HaMelech made a Yam like for a mikveh. That Yam that Moshe made, was a bucker standing. So he built like a big bowl over there and is standing on top of 12 cattle. Shloisha poinim tzvaina, 3 are facing north. The shloisha poinim yama, 3 are facing west. He's, if you're facing the water, you're now going to the right. Shloisha poinim negma, 3 of them are facing south, and the shloisha poinim mizrach, the east. If you go to look at the way, the different points of the compass that Shlomo just tabulated, if you're facing it, you're going to the right. The yam and this base and this bowl on top of it. The chol achoreim base and everything, the back of the animals are all facing the base hamikdash. So what is he from here? They're all facing inwards. The backs of the animal all facing inwards, and the front of the animal is facing outwards. Holomadet, you're called pinish. At that point, you should always, whenever you have to turn, you should always turn to the right. So it seems to me, Rabbi Yossi believes Rambam by Yechaskel. That's why he goes to the right. If you're facing the Mizbeach, you're going to the right. Umar less than Yechaskel. You doesn't hold of that. So no. Everyone agrees on Yechaskel's principle. You should always veer to the right. But you know what's going on here? This argument. One of them holds you learn pnim mechutz. You learn from the outside, just whatever activities happen outside, you go to the right. The same thing goes over here as well. And you don't learn left to right. And therefore, you can't compare one another. He agrees the outside, that's how it was. But not in this case over here. So the Gemara, no, but in principle, everyone agrees to the whole thing. The question is only what happens in the Mizbech. We follow the same rules as that. That's one way of learning.
What aren't they asked from how the Kohen does the Hatzos Hatam in the external Mizbech? He goes up the ramp and he turns right. And then he works his way.
So we're saying Rabbi Akiva agrees to that. We're saying here he doesn't argue.
Why did they bring the Yam Shel Shlomi? Why didn't they bring how they do the Hazos in the Mizbech HaChitzon?
Maybe he argues on that as well. We don't know what he says. So therefore we don't know. So now he's explaining, in principle he agrees, because we learned it from Shlomo HaMelech. It's only the Mizbech HaPnim that he argues. So the Gemara, but Rabbi Akiva, he doesn't learn from another. Give him the choice. Why does Akiva Dafka mandate that you should go to the left? Say, because he doesn't believe in principle, you can go either. Who cares which way he goes? So Rabbi Akiva explains, what Rabbi Akiva Dafka insists that you go back. You trace back your steps and you continue going to the left. Question is, if you don't believe the principle of going to the right, doesn't mean you're against it. Just you don't care. No big deal. So why does he insist? The truth of the matter is, as soon as you hit, when you walked over, the first corner that you hit according to Rabbi Akiva was the west, the what do you call it? The southwest corner. So as soon as you come out of the Kodesh Kodashim and the Mizbeach Hazab, you hit the southwest corner. You should dab the blood right there, because Dominish Lakish ain't ma'avidin ala mitzvahs. You don't bypass a mitzvah. My law of it, why didn't you do that? So we say we should see. It says v'yotze ela mizbeach. It says v'yotze ela mizbeach. Adenofik mekul mizbeach until you leave the entire mizbeach, and therefore you had to go to the southwest corner. But the kivan the yoyivahu keren. Since once you've accomplished that, you did the southwest corner, you must go back to the southeast corner because the fact is, on the one hand, you have a principle, on the other hand, you have a possible Yotzal Mizbeach. So the first dabbing is the Yotzal Mizbeach, you bypass it, but then you have to go back to the principle, so therefore you go back there. And once you're there, you continue on that route. To go back again, to continue going right, that for sure doesn't make sense. You're doing extra walking for nothing. That's one answer. Or I could tell you, if everyone agreed that you have to walk around by foot and dab it, then maybe Rabbi Akiva would agree. He would agree that from where he starts, you continue going to the right, just like basically. And everyone agreed that you learn from the outer Mizbeach. That's the way it should be done. This is the argument. Rabbi Yossi says you go by foot, and therefore you have to walk around in this particular pattern. Rabbi Akiva says you're just standing in one place, and because you're standing in one place, there's no such thing as called pinishat plane. You're not moving at all. So then he holds you go back the other way, because that's the one you bypassed, and that's the one that you should go back to. Or I can say, Kuli Am, everyone agrees Hakofa Biyad. Everyone agrees that in fact you don't even walk around, you're just standing in one place. Like in our Mishnah, there's one opinion that says you stand in one place and you just bend over and you dab all the corners. With this argument, Mar Savar Yalfinan Yad Beregel. One of them says you learn the hand from the foot, just like by the foot you walk, you go right, you mean same thing over here. Mar Savar Lo Yalfinan. No one says it's a different activity altogether, and therefore we don't learn the hand from the foot, and you don't have to do, you don't have to go the particular way. Says the Gemara, how can you tell me? You tell me now that everyone agrees that you go by hand. But in our Mishnah, since in the end of our Mishnah, it says, Rabbalez is the one who said, Rabbalez is the one who says, you're telling me now that everyone agrees that you stand in one place and you put your hand, you just bend over and you dab all the four corners. But in our Mishnah, the Tanakama definitely hold that you walk around. It's only Rabbalez who says that you stand in one place. But Klal Tanakama literally. To go back, like we said before, one of them holds it by hand or by foot. In fact, the very same machlek is the same machlek of Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi holds it by foot, therefore you have to follow the procedure called the protocol called pinish at the pointer. And Rabbi Kiva holds it standing in one place, therefore it doesn't matter. And now it doesn't matter. We want you to go back the other way because ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. One more way of learning. We have a different argument together. You know what the argument is? Mar Sabar the Mizbeach Primi, one in the whole Mizbeach Primi, Kisaviv the Mizbeach Chitzin. That the Mizbeach Primi is like the entire, even though the Mizbeach Primi is only 1 amma by 1 amma, and the Mizbeach Chitzin is massive, still the 1 amma is just a shrunk version, a contracted version of the Mizbeach HaChitzon, and the same rules apply. And every single says you got to walk around. The Mizbeach HaChitzon is so massive that it's each corner sticking out on top is 1 amma by 1 amma, which is basically the depth and length of the Mizbeach Hazav. So the other one says, Akiva says that
when it says at first that Soviv the Mizbeach Pnimi is like Soviv the Mizbeach. What does it mean, Soviv Mizbeach Pnimi? It means walking around it. The Mizbeach Pnimi didn't have a Soviv.
No. He doesn't mean the Soviv. That's Soviv. Soviv means the circumference. That the circumference of the Mizbeach Pnimi, even though it's only 1 amma by 1 amma, has the same dinim as the circumference of the Mizbeach HaChitzon. Right, which is marked 32 by 32. And therefore, just like over there, called Pinishat Paina, over here also called Pinishat Paina. The other one says, no, the entire Mizbeach Pnimi is only 1 keren. And 1 keren of the Mizbeach HaChitzon, because that's a literal size of the keren outside, and that's a literal size of the Mizbeach Pnimi. And therefore, you don't have to follow kol pinis, even though if you learn from the inside and the outside, but not in this respect. Is equal to 1 keren on the outside mizbeach, and therefore you don't have to go to the right. Okay, that ends today.